Okay, clearly we need to do a little review of these questions about these three brachot texts, because the answers I saw on your sheets were not quite complete. So first of all, this was the first Mishnah, okay? The cases, Hayat rochev al hachamor, right? Getting down from the donkey, right? Yachzir et panav, turning the face, Yechaven et libo, directing the heart. What are the three main aspects of the tefillah ritual that our Mishnah would have addressed? That question was referring to Mishnah addressed before this. So, and B, what do we learn from this Mishnah about the lichatchila way to recite the Shemona Esrei? Obviously, you need to remember what lichatchila is. Okay. So first, the aspect of the tefillah ritual we have addressed. When was in Mishnah 1, and in Mishnah 3, who must pray and what they should say when they pray. Again, we're talking about the aspects, not the details of what they say. You could add in for Mishnah 3, how often, but I'm not as worried about that. Okay. B, what do we learn about the lechatchila way to recite the Shemona Esrei? There are two things. Right. One, from Yered, we learn that you're supposed to stand. But two, Yachzir et panav, facing Jerusalem, it is true that this second line is a b'diavad case, but we said very clearly in class that facing Jerusalem is part of what you are supposed to do lechatchila. So here we're saying you should really do both. If you can't stand, you should still do the facing Jerusalem part, but facing Jerusalem is part of the lechatchila. Now, what do we learn about what counts as a b'diavad situation? You have to read that question. What counts as a b'diavad situation? Right? Not what do you do in a b'diavad situation, but what is a b'diavad situation? And the answer is im eino yachol. Okay, here in this Mishnah, you can do the b'diavad thing if you are unable to, if you cannot do the lechatchila thing, right? Eino yachol. The boat, carriage, and raft are just examples of situations where you might not be able to do the lechatchila thing. Okay, what counts as b'diavad, can't do it when you can't do the lechatchila. Now, D, this is where I don't know what happened, but we had a whole conversation about what is significant about the mention of the temple in this Mishnah. If you just told me, tells us it's important, or they want to remember it, you haven't told me anything. Right? You need to get further. Okay? Here's just a sampling of the things of the ideas that we gathered about that. We're still trying that in our prayers we're trying to stay connected to the sacrifices and to those old rituals, even though they're not done anymore. We still think of the temple as God's house where God dwells, right? So therefore, if we're trying to connect with God, then physically we can do that by directing ourselves to God's house, right? The idea that all of us, wherever we are in the world, all facing one place when we say our prayers, sort of is parallel to all of us, to everyone, all Israelites having come to one place back when there was a temple. Facing one central place is a way of uniting us. The idea that, and the idea that facing the temple, that having our prayers connect back to the temple and the sacrifices, connect us to our past. All of these are ways to understand why facing the temple is such a central part of doing this prayer ritual. Okay, the second one, Mishnah 5:1. Ein omdim lihipalel ela mitoch koved rosh. You only stand from a state of seriousness. Okay. And then, um, and then the cases of the king and the snake. What two questions about prayer ritual, the prayer ritual, does this Mishnah answer? Right. The two questions. The first section talks about how do you properly prepare to begin your prayer. The second section talks about how you're supposed to act, the level of focus you're supposed to have during your prayer. So when I say what two questions, what is the Mishnah answering? I'm not asking for the answers. The questions are, how do you properly prepare to begin the prayer, and how are you supposed to act during the prayer? And what do these rules tell us about how a prayer experience should feel? So here there are a range of answers. I want you to just see that this language of getting into the proper frame of mind before you begin, and absolutely keeping out any distractions while you are praying, are supposed to give a feel of something that is very serious and is a big deal. That something that demands your total focus and total attention, and that I would say I'm trying to feel like I'm really standing before God in this brief moment of tefillah. Now, how does this Mishnah use hyperbole? What is its purpose? Actually, you should actually be looking to answer that question. How does it use hyperbole? Well, first, it talks about people who do something very extreme to prepare for tefillah. The Chasidim Rishonim, waiting an hour. And then it talks about ignoring distractions that are life-threatening, that clearly go beyond what we would actually expect someone to do. That's right. That's hyperbole. Now, why do they use hyperbole? Well, so they are trying to show how seriously we should work to keep out distractions and to get into the proper mindset. How hard we should work to make sure our prayers are done properly. And similarly, I would say, to avoid distracting others, which we often don't think about in our own tefillot. So perhaps we're not expecting you to actually ignore a poisonous snake, but giving that example sets a bar that at least we can sort of push towards. Okay, the story. What does this story tell us about the Shemona Esrei? Simple. It was created by the rabbis in Yavne. Right? It did not exist during temple times. So Yavne is after the temple, but shortly after the loss of the temple. So that's just important information. Now, what was Rabban Gamliel's role? Well, he's clearly in charge in the story, and that's because we have learned that he was the Nasi, the head of the academy. Okay? Shouldn't be surprising that he is overseeing something that is clearly a major change in how the Jews are going to practice their religion. But the other thing we've learned about Rabban Gamliel, he's the one in the Mishnah who says that everyone should say this prayer every day. And in fact, he's the one who says everyone should say the whole thing every day. He's very invested in people saying this prayer. And now we can understand why. It's a new practice. He is not simply stating a law, he is trying to market this practice, to get people on board, to participate in it. He is trying to emphasize that everyone needs to be part of it because it's going to be central to how they move forward. What changed in how Jews prayed as a result of this story? What I mean by that is this story definitely indicates that prayer during the time of the temple was very different than prayer after the temple. Now they have a set prayer ritual that everyone does to connect with God. They have this prayer practice that the community can share, right? That helps them serve God together, right? During the time of the temple, sacrifices played that communal role. Prayer was very private, presumably individual, organized. We're not really sure, but it's certainly not set in the way that it is now. Now, what does this story suggest about why Rabban Gamliel wanted to establish a daily fixed prayer? There are multiple answers. I just gave two. Right? One, but when we ask the question why, well, why did he do this? Why would he have done this at this time? Well, knowing that it's shortly after the temple definitely suggests that he sees it as serving some of the functions and social purposes once filled by sacrifices, filling that void, and filling that void in a variety of ways. And B, not unrelated, but it's a moment when he's trying to give his community a new central practice around which to build their religious lives. So he saw his community as suddenly in need of a defining religious practice like this.